So welcome to this next Thursday evening webinar from us. And this is part of our new Road to Restart campaign. And this week focusing on trustees and issues that trustees might have, and just how we build trustee confidence to confidently and safely get going again. And we thought it'd be helpful, rather than doing a, if you like, a how-to webinar, but to get some insight into what's happening and what has happened. And so I'm really pleased to introduce two trustees and seasoned RDA volunteers, let me put it like that. So we have Pauline Roestenburg, who is the regional chair for the South East region and also the chair of the Chalkdown group in Kent. And we have Barbara Manson from the Grampian and Highland region, regional chair of Grampian and Highland region in Scotland, and with the Gordon group in Inverurie. Both of them have had quite different experiences of the lockdown so far. And so I thought it'd be interesting for everyone to hear and just to have a chance to sort of reflect on your own experience and listening to what they have to say. So I'm going to shut up now, you'll be pleased to know, and just intervene with the odd question. But we'll start off by Pauline, if we come to you first and just say, give us a picture of what's gone on in your region and your group, and how it's been for you as a group trustee.
Yeah, so the region, the Southeast region, it is a region of 36 groups. There were 37, 2 have merged during the pandemic. Chichester up to Epsom and down to Dover. And Chalkdown is one of the smaller groups, that's my group. And we have 13 that have been signed off. From large groups that operate usually every day, or almost every day, to my little groups just once a week. We were one of the first groups to reopen in July, so we've adjusted all the way along as rules have changed. Which has been, I think that is a very different picture to yours, Barbara, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm regional chair of Grampian and Highland, and it stretches from Dundee to Orkney, amazingly. We have 18 groups, but I only have 2 groups signed off and only 1 group that has ridden last summer for a short time before we were all closed down again. I also have 2 carriage driving groups who aren't operating at the moment. I think the mood in Scotland has been very wary due to coronavirus and probably rules a little bit more strictly enforced. And I think that has contributed to the fact that not so many groups have opened. But I think the mood is changing now, which is great to see. And people are beginning to think about what they could do over this summer.
And I think it snowballs as well. I think once you get 2, 3, 4, it starts to build, confidence builds in the region. So I'm sure that will happen in your region when it gets going.
That's what we're hoping.
Yeah, the geographics don't help, I'm sure, as it's so spread.
Yeah. And thinking about the actual process, Barbara, what do you think are the barriers that have stopped your groups from happening, or that trustees are concerned about?
I think there's a myriad of things. I'm sure we're all not alone. I'm sure most people maybe listening to this call have heard them. I feel we're a purpose-built centre outside Inverurie, and certainly there is a consideration that we have staff. So if we bring our staff back off furlough, we probably can't bring in enough riders to cover salaries and things like that. So that's a big issue. Initially, especially, I think people felt the responsibility quite keenly and felt they were being looked to, and were a bit fearful sometimes of that responsibility. And age of volunteers and vulnerable participants, all sorts of things that one would expect to hear from trustees and everybody associated with the group. I think everyone just needed time to really think about these things. And I think perhaps now they're coming out of some of those mindsets.
Yeah, I think I think at the beginning it was just we didn't know what was going to happen, and we're kind of better practiced now. I know it's changing and it has changed along the way, but we are not so fearful of it now. We know how to adapt. I mean, it's amazing how adaptable we've been. I really can't believe how we've adjusted at such short notice.
And what do you think trustees, Pauline, what can trustees do to kind of get over those barriers, or to, I mean, is it, you know, are they right, or do you how can we get past them?
Well, our experience at Chalkdown was we were very, very led by the senior coach. And when we saw the paperwork, we thought, gosh, this isn't for the faint-hearted. And it wasn't initially. She spent a long time working on it, and especially the risk assessments. And it didn't involve all the trustees, and I think probably it should have done. I think we were saving them the burden of really knowing too much about what all the coaches were up to and planning. But in hindsight, they wanted to be more involved. When we got going, when we were finally signed off, we had a debrief after every session, which was once a week. So we had probably 4 debriefs with the trustees, Zoom meetings, and they gradually relaxed about it all. And we gradually built numbers. So we started with 3, I think 3 or 4 possibly, and then we built to 5. I don't think anybody should rush into it, suddenly open their doors, and all the riders return. I think that's a disaster. I think it's got to be a gradual thing, and also not too many volunteers. So I know some groups have said, oh gosh, you know, most of our volunteers are shielding, or they can't, you know, they haven't had their second jabs, or we didn't have any jabs last year. But actually we needed to keep the volunteers to a minimum. We didn't want any sort of pinch points, or, you know, we needed to make sure everybody was respecting the social distancing. So although many groups have said we simply haven't got enough volunteers, you only need your key volunteers, really, those that can take responsibility of the ponies, that know the few riders that you've got. You don't want volunteers milling around and socializing. So I've gone off at a tangent actually. So yeah.
And Barbara, do those things, would those things apply to some of your groups, do you think?
Yes, I think so, definitely. I think I heard of, you know, really close contact between coaches and trustees, just as Pauline has said. I think if you can get a really good working party together within your group, so that everybody knows what everybody else is doing. And I think it's quite good for the coaches to know the worries of the trustees, and the responsibilities that they have, so that everybody begins to respect everybody else's viewpoint. And I think walkthroughs with the trustees, if you can do it socially distanced, or make a video, you know, if the coaches can make a video about their plans and how they put the risk assessment together, that's a really clear way of showing trustees, you know, and as Pauline said, starting slow, you know, not being too ambitious, maybe starting with a quiet quarter, you know, not actually having anybody riding, you know, so you can check out your risk assessment works, you know, it makes things a little bit simpler. You know, there's lots of things you could do, I think, that can help. I think an audit of all your participants and all your volunteers, so you know what you're looking at. And again, I don't think it's going to be huge numbers. You know, not everyone's desperate to get back. There are lots of people who are still shielding, haven't had second jabs, or for whatever reason they're a bit worried about coming back. So they're probably not going to come back now. So out of your independent riders and their family bubbles, you might only have 3 or 4 riders, or maybe 6 or something. And you don't need many volunteers for that amount of, you know, amount of riders. And I think that, you know, that can work quite well. And one of my groups in the region, what they did was they made all the volunteers trustees. So the trustees became the volunteer force, and they did it that way. And then that's a sort of collective responsibility, and all the rest of it. And I think that was quite a fun thing to do. If you can, if that's possible. I know that's not always possible.
Mm.
And then they can
As you
lead by
said,
example, which is a very strong sort of way to go forward.
absolutely. So yes, innovation, as you said, Pauline. And do you think, as trustees, are people feeling the sort of weight of responsibility about making these decisions?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
really think so, especially those not involved with the operational side. I think, the coaches and those that actually attend the sessions, we share a passion, don't we? We know exactly what is involved. But, if you're a trustee that is, I shouldn't say just a trustee, but a trustee that is more involved on the accountancy, the treasury side, or the chair, if the chair isn't directly involved. Yeah, I think they do need to come. It's a really good idea to involve them in the session if you can. We have one of our trustees. She is a volunteer and she does usually come along under normal circumstances, but she looks after what we call the hygiene table, and she meets and greets and she makes sure all the paperwork is there for that day. So she's not involved with any of the horses or the riders, but that's a responsibility that perhaps a trustee, if they haven't gone back to work or whatever, could do. Yeah, would just involve them more. Mm.
Any top tips from Scotland on that one, Barbara?
Yeah, I think involvement and communication is the real key to this. I think people need to know they're not alone. I'm sure there have been lots and lots and lots of RDA Zoom calls and committee meetings on Zoom and all the rest of it. And we're probably all talking about the same things, and I think, so therefore, any sharing on Zoom, I mean, I think Zoom is the way forward. It's probably been, some people are completely fed up of it, but I think it's a revelation, certainly in our part of the world, because we can all connect with each other and share experiences. And I think that's a great thing to do. And I've just organized now our first group who are back riding, or will be back riding. They're all going to come on. Well, some of the trustees, a coach and a rider, are going to come on with their COVID officer, and they're going to talk about their experiences from the different points of view. Because I thought that would be quite powerful, and it would mean lots of our people can join the Zoom because it's sort of relevant to them, because I have a rider and a coach and a trustee. I thought that might help people hopefully make that small step forward and think about starting again.
Yeah, I think the matching up of people on Zoom, different groups, it is so helpful. Every Zoom meeting I've had with different groups, and I love matchmaking people, they've all said, gosh, this is really so helpful. We must do this again. Yeah, as you said, we are a little bit fatigued with Zoom, but it has so many advantages. Yeah. And also, I was going to say, no excuse for meetings going on for hours and hours. We have a big committee, 9, and those meetings can go on forever. But on Zoom, you can control it better. There's, you don't have to drive half an hour to get to your venue. So yeah, the no excuses really. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. I've attended lots of Zooms, and it's quite nice at the end of it to suddenly find myself at home and not at the other end of the country. So in terms of, yes, linking up trustees, talking to other trustees who've done it before, but also communicating within your group as well seem to be key things. And certainly, just as an aside, we're keen that trustees of groups that haven't yet opened or reopened should talk to groups that have done it. And if you need to get in touch with one of those, then go to your region or go to Marissa at the office, and we'll be able to help you out. But just perhaps taking a slightly negative turn for a moment, there's going to be, we all know that not everybody agrees with everything all the time, and this is a sometimes difficult and stressful process. So what about experiences of how you move forward when there are differences of opinion between the trustees? And Pauline, you've had experience of that, I think.
Yeah, so I think, as I said earlier, we ploughed ahead and wanted to get started straight away. I had every confidence in the coach she is a trustee as well, that was putting putting it together. We also have 2 other coaches who are trustees on our group. But as I said, it's a big committee. There are 9 of us. And we presented our plan to our committee and hadn't involved everyone until it was presented, and they really did feel, a couple of them, 2-3 people felt that they should have been more involved. And I think I probably misjudged it. I thought, gosh, they've got enough to worry about at the moment. Let's do all the legwork for them and present it. But actually, in hindsight, they should have been more involved. And hence all the debriefs that we kept having, just to make sure everybody knew everything that we were doing every week. They did step to one side very amicably. Yeah, look, we're all looking forward to getting back again in different, with different roles. Yeah, so communication.
Yeah. Barbara, have you heard of that coming from your part of the world?
I haven't heard yet, but I'm sure it will. It's inevitable, I'm sure. And I think, yeah, I think it's about, we can learn from other people's mistakes. That's the lucky thing about being slow to get off the ground. So, I definitely involving people. It's the same with everything, isn't it? You think you're doing them a good turn, but actually they feel a little bit left out. And I think, especially in the early days, Pauline, when you were being brave and doing it last July, there were so many question marks and things changed all the time. I think, or I hope, maybe not quite as many question marks now. And everybody's more experienced, and national are always at the end of the phone. And I also feel it's probably quite good if you've got trustees who are worried or are dead against opening. It's great if they can speak to other trustees who have opened. I'm sure that has to help.
And I think it's really important that your committee, your trustees, you do have a balance. You need the cautious ones that hold us back when we get a bit too enthusiastic about new ideas. Those people are very important, and it was a very testing time. Yeah, we all learnt from that, and we're still learning. Last year was a huge learning curve for us all.
Absolutely. So, and in terms of top tips, I know that Faye's come in and asked what's on the hygiene. I think what's on the hygiene table. Pauline, was that yours? So what is your hygiene table?
Gosh, we sanitize everything. Well, it's very difficult in an equine environment to sanitize everything, but so yes, as soon as they approach the arena and approach where we meet, there is what we call the hygiene table, and they sanitize their hands. All the tack is sanitized between riders, where they touch. So yes, and we keep the folder with all the forms that have been signed by those attending, the COVID forms, the I'm going to call them disclaimers, I can't remember what they're called now, but so we keep a file every week with a few actually spare sheets in case someone turns up unexpectedly. We should always know who's going to appear, which is why we keep the volunteers to a minimum. We absolutely know who we've scheduled to be there that day, but just in case a rider comes with an unexpected carer, there are spare forms, and that person on that the front of house, as it were, is responsible for checking all that out. So yeah, but I even invested in a pedal bin. We read somewhere you mustn't even touch the bin. I mean, this is how paranoid we were in July. So yes, I went searching for the only pedal bin, I think, in Maidstone at the time. But yeah, mustn't touch the lids of the bin. So yeah, all of that sort of stuff. We were so ultra careful. Yeah.
I think that that's a good example of the sort of practical tips you can pick up from somebody else. And then in your experience, or both of your experiences, is it you've talked about the kind of complication and the difficulty, and yes, there is sort of paperwork to go through, but once you've got through that, does it pick up and feel normal quite quickly, or does it continue to feel challenging?
It feels normal. It's
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just practice, isn't it? Just familiarity. I think it's going to be strange for a lot of us getting back to the old normal. We're so cautious, and of course at one point we weren't wearing masks, and then just before you announced from National Office that we should wear masks, we were getting very anxious about that. We were in Tier 4 in Kent, and one of our trustees is a GP, and she said, you really should be wearing masks. I'm actually observing, I know you're trying to keep your distances, but yeah, so that was another thing we adjusted to, which felt strange, but now masks are a thing that we just do naturally.
Yeah. Yes.
Sad as it is.
Yeah. And Barbara, I know you've got fewer groups going, but have those have you has that feeling started to diminish, or do you think people continue to feel worried about it in the same way?
No, I don't. I think certainly the people I've spoken to, the group I've spoken to, said they were all, very nervous the first week. But even one of the riders, I spoke to her who'd gone back to that group, and she said, "Oh yeah, we were all absolutely terrified." But by the time she said she'd been a couple of times, it just felt like going back to her RDA group, and how much that meant to her on a mental health sort of level, and many other reasons for her. And I think that's what it's all about. It's about starting off in a really small way. And showing that it can be done, and offering something to people who have been very isolated over the last year.
Yeah.
Almost is a year, isn't it now? And I think that's really important, and I'm sure people will see the value of that.
I visited a group last year between lockdowns and tiers and things. I visited one of our Sussex groups, and I was most impressed. I parked the car, went towards the gate, and I thought, gosh, what's happening here? She came towards me with a thermometer, and I was zapped as I approached, and I thought, gosh, that is very efficient. And yeah, I did think perhaps we should be doing that. I know it's not essential, but yeah, it's different. Everybody's dealing with it differently, with the basics, all the basics in place, but approaching it differently.
Absolutely. And when people have got it up and running and it has worked, just coming back to a positive side, what's it feel like? What's the particularly the trustee experience of when it works? Pauline, how's that been for you?
Yeah, well, it's as we said the other day, it's what we're there for. It's what we feel passionate about, and we should so be helping our riders, and yeah, it fulfills our message and our what we're there for, what we're supposed to be doing. Yeah, it's a great feeling.
Have you seen that, Barbara?
Yeah, definitely. I think my one group that's going, I mean, they announced themselves as the trailblazers for our region. They're just really delighted that they are, and they're going to be, I think, quite delighted to strut with stuff on a Zoom call as well. And as Pauline said, and as you said, Ed, earlier this week, there's a little bit of a moral imperative, and it's what we do, it's what we love, it's why we are doing this. And I think it's great to get back to what we do on a practical level as opposed to a theoretical or a Zoom level.
Absolutely. And if to get to that point, if you had a single piece of advice for trustees, what would your here you go, I'm going to put you on the spot now. So Barbara, what would your single piece of advice for some group trustees be to get there?
I would say take it slowly and don't be scared.
Don't give up. Don't give up. Yeah. Don't turn away. Don't give up. There is a way. And yeah, just even if it's one rider, it is worth all the paperwork. You don't need many volunteers. You only need one horse. I know you've got the issues with the larger centres and, you know, reopening, bringing people back out of furlough, etc. It's a different problem, isn't it? But if you can somehow, for just one rider, what we did in the summer last year, we thought we may have a venue issue. We rent our venue. We hire it once a week, and we had so one of our horses is loaned to us each week by our coach, one of our coaches, and we had her arena assessed, so as an alternative arena. And it was because we had that arena assessed, we were able to put 3 riders into the virtual Royal Windsor Dressage. We've never done anything like that ever before, and it was managed during the pandemic just simply because we had that other option. And in fact, we have another group that have had their one of their coaches' arenas assessed, and the pony is at her house. So, you know, there's no movement, there's no traffic, you know, it's very quiet and remote. You're not going to a busy livery yard or, you know, so that really has given us an alternative. But yeah, they were very determined to find a way. There's always a way.
Absolutely. So yeah, so the pressure's on to get more groups engaging with this, especially in Grampian and Highland.
Well, we really want that. Yeah, we really want that, and I think I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will. There's so much help out there now, and so much encouragement. It's going to happen. It really is.
Great. So we're kind of drawing towards a close here. I just wanted to make a point. I've seen a comment that if there are carriage driving groups trustees listening in, I hope will have heard that in England anyway, the protocols have been agreed to get carriage driving started by the end of this month. And yes, we are in the process of putting together all the guidance and the support that you will need to make that happen, and carriage driving very definitely will have to start in a small and slow fashion, but that should be coming out. And I know there've been 1 or 2 practical questions coming through, and just like to say there is the Road to Restart now features on the MyRDA website, so you can go there. There's quite a lot of information there, and as both Pauline and Barbara have said, it is quite comprehensive. But there's a sort of flow chart to take you through it now, and hopefully it's also sort of quite straightforward, even if there's quite a lot of things to think about. And the key here is all about the risk assessment and making sure that you can satisfy yourselves and ourselves that you're safe to get going. And if you can, then as trustees, you should be really confident that you're doing it right. And I think we've had, thank you, Barbara, and thank you, Pauline, because it's been really brilliant and fascinating just to hear your experiences of your own groups and those groups in your areas. And I think I'm right in saying you're happy to pick up questions or comments afterwards. So if you've got those, please feel free to email them on to us. And if you need support from us, then go to Marissa, or come to us at National Office, or preferably start with your region. Your region, your county team have been very much a part of this process as well. But I think the final thing I'd say is I'm also hoping that as we come out of winter and the sun comes out and the days lengthen and the sky gets a bit warmer, people will be more desperate to do this. So it's all happening at the same time. But thank you very much, everybody. Tune in again next week for the more practical how-to session. But at this point, I hope that's helped you feel a little bit more confident and get some tips for your groups. So thanks very much, and goodbye.
Yeah,
Bye.
good luck. Good luck.
Thank you.
Bye.